I think because we have gained such power through technology, we see rivers as objects to be moved around, to be manipulated, to be stopped, and that manipulation has brought us incredible gifts in terms of human flourishing, including clean drinking water and clean electricity for billions of people. But it has come at a cost as well. So there is a very old story about rivers, which is that they are living presences, and there is a very young story, which is that they are there absolutely at our command, our control.
Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Rivers are vanishing, not just from our landscapes, but from our imaginations. Today we're joined by writer and environmental thinker Robert Macfarlane to explore the central question of his latest book, Is a River Alive? From Ecuador's cloud forest to Canada's legally protected rivers, Macfarlane shares stories of ecological grief, legal transformation, and cultural memory. Together, we explore how language, law, and storytelling can revive our relationship with water. I hope you enjoy the conversation. This podcast is brought to you by TELUS Smart Home Security. Secure, simplify, and easily monitor your home from anywhere using the Smart Home Security app. Visit TELUS.com/smarthome-security to learn more about Canada's most trusted security provider. Hi, Robert. It's so good to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You have a brand new book, brand new to Canada, just came out a few days ago, called Is a River Alive?
Yep.
Whoa. I mean, I think they are alive, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a question, not a statement. So it definitely invites the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's an exploration, not a declaration. So, I spent 4 years trying to work out an answer. My son was like, it's going to be a short book. Yeah, obviously a river's alive.
Yeah, Dad.
You're the same.
But it's interesting because the book stopped me, right? Like, first of all, I love the cover. I love the colors and everything. But I was like, is a river alive? And I immediately went, well, yes. But then I thought, oh, wait a minute. I sit where I am in Vancouver. I know that my neighborhood kind of sits on a riverbed. And is that alive? Like, I don't see it. I don't even know it's here. I know the map that shows where, everybody settled. And is that what you mean by, is it alive? Like, are there rivers that aren't alive?
Well, there are, and there are a lot of them in my country, England. So and sometimes when I'm having these conversations, I say, well, if you find it hard to imagine a river as alive, try and imagine a dying river or a dead river. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I get that. That makes perfect sense. A dying river, the fish float belly up. I mean, we have not a single river in good overall health, according to our Environment Agency standards in England at the moment. Not one. Yeah, it's a privatization catastrophe that has crept up on us over 35, 36 years. And we have woken up to it in the last 5 years. And suddenly there is this extraordinary kind of river revival movement in England, recognizing the harm that we have done to rivers and also then correspondingly the life that they bring. And maybe that's where the aliveness conversation comes back in, because if rivers can die, surely they can live, and they bring life, right? I mean, they shape us, they shape our settlement, Vancouver, they shape our history, our language, they're storytellers, they're singers, we think with them, they run through us, they run through humans as well as through places. Like I sometimes ask people, who are your rivers? Like, who are the rivers who have shaped your life or run through your life?
Well, we have a lot of rivers in Canada, like an enormous amount. And in British Columbia, we have so many rivers. Like, I think about the Cheakamus River. I think about the Squamish River. I think about the Fraser River. It's a huge river that runs through our province. I mean, we have little rivers and big rivers and medium-sized rivers. And then I think about streams, and I think about the lakes, and I think about where the water comes from and all our mountains. And I mean, so it wasn't until your book that I thought, well, actually, rivers have always been a part of my life. Like, I've been surrounded by rivers. So when you say in the UK, you don't have one, I find that very hard to comprehend.
Right. Canada has, many water troubles. The Athabasca River downstream of the Alberta tar sands, just to give one example of what happens when what we do as humans begins to grievously wound a river. And you see it, right? When you approach a living river, you enter its aura, you feel enlivened. I'm speaking to you from Toronto. I was down by the Humber on, I think, the first sunny day in Toronto in about 6 weeks. And it was so lively there. The birds, the water life, and the people just drawn to the river to be by that water. So when we start to imagine life as being lived in relation to rivers, as it has been historically for so long, then suddenly the idea of rivers being alive, being life forces and not just resources. That's sort of where the argument is about that idea of life force versus resource. And they brought us so much as resources, but we've kind of forgotten, at least in England, that they are also life forces.
Well, I don't think that the average person really thinks about a river too much. And I'm not sure. Yeah. And I'm not sure why. I feel like in the world of bodies of water, oceans and seas get, their top billing, right? And then maybe lakes, some beautiful lakes, or they get second billing. Well, where do rivers fall? Like rivers, to me, when I reflect about what I know about rivers, they're kind of scary, right? Some of these big rivers, they can carry you away in a flash. They're dangerous. You stay away from the river. A river can overflow and take down the banks and ruin homes. And so what your book has done is it has made me reflect on my own idea of what a river is and what its place in my environment is.
Good. Well, that's wonderful to hear. That's exactly, I want to open up these conversations. So there are, I suppose, asking readers to think what happens imaginatively, politically, socially, if you imagine rivers as having lives and having deaths, and even as having rights. And as you know, that becomes a thread or a flow in the book. But I spent 4 years following rivers, meeting river people, following river ideas, and I ended up in Ecuador, in Canada, in Quebec, Nitassinan, following this extraordinary, one of your big wild rivers, the Mutashikashibu, and in India, in southern India. And in each place, rivers were under threat of death from pollution, from damming, from mining. But they were also being imagined in really radical ways. So in Ecuador, in the constitution, the rights of rivers and forests, the rights of nature, are recognized at constitutional level. So a mining company cannot violate the rights of the river without running the risk of a constitutional court ruling that forces it to quit the area, to give up its work. And this is pretty remarkable, right? A river having rights. Well, does it make sense to you?
Yes.
Interesting.
I do, because I think about how rivers now you're making me think about how we have damaged rivers. I think that we have this idea that a river is always running, right? And it's always, pushing things downstream. And so if you put a can of paint in the river, it'll just flush it away.
Dilution is the solution to pollution. Have you ever heard that one before?
No, I have not.
That is a kind of classic of old school hydrology, and it's wrong, right? I mean, exactly what you say. We dream of rivers as limitless supplies. They will always be there with fresh water for us, and limitless sumps and dumps. They will always take away our waste. And again, Toronto, the Don River, which you will know, the Don River Parkway. So the Don River in Toronto was so sickened by pollution that it caught fire. A river caught fire twice and burned because the oil content and was so great that it torched. And a funeral was held for the Don in the 1960s, a real sort of bit of performative river activism. but recognizing exactly as you say, this idea, because the city had just poured all of its waste, tannery waste and oil, sewage, everything just goes into the river. So as soon as we stop thinking about them in those ways, infinite sources and infinite sumps, then we start to think about life and death and what rivers do to us both practically and spiritually. Like you, it sounds like you have a really strong heart relationship with rivers. Is that right?
Yes, but I didn't think of it that way ever until your book. So and that's what I find so curious about it. First of all, that you wrote a book about rivers, right? Like your son said, right? It's like, Dad, I mean, come on. Yeah, it's alive. But is it? And so then it makes you think about, well, I've always known rivers to be in my life. I've never given a river a second thought, really, unless I'm there and I'm like, oh, look at those people fishing, or oh, look at how beautiful that looks. Look at the water glistening off of it. Or, you might see a news story where a river is dried up, or it's broken its bank, or it's taken out, all these homes, or we've had a big, the dam is, whatever's happening, right, in the news. But to really sort of dissect your own personal beliefs about a river is something I've never done before.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy you're doing it now with me.
Well, no, I'm really happy that you wrote this because I never seen a book like this before.
Oh, well, I guess it is a love letter to rivers. It is a love letter to river people. And I met some astonishing people in these journeys. Readers keep referring to them as characters, which I love because it suggests they've fallen out of the pages of a novel, but actually they've fallen out of life. It's just they're such incredible people that I just sort of wrote them down. But they're all working in some way. This Chilean mycologist called Juliana Furci, this young Tamil river activist called Yuvan Abes, and then an amazing Innu poet and community leader called Rita Mestakosho. They're central to the book, and they're all working to kind of reimagine a better future for rivers and people and creatures, more than human life, all together. And that's hard work. It's hard work. So they're real visionaries.
How did you find these river people?
Oh, the river people, yeah.
How did you find them, and how did you choose which rivers to focus on?
Well, people, I don't know if I'm allowed to use this word on a podcast, but we have a mild English cuss word called. So somebody once wrote, Robert Macfarlane never seems to meet a dickhead. That's
That's fine to say.
That's fine to say. I thought, yeah. And I thought, well, no, I do meet a lot of dickheads when I'm traveling. It's just I don't want to write about them. And it's the angels who interest me much more. And so how did I find them? Well, partly I sought them out and partly they sought me out. I think, this is my, 11th book, and people have sort of found me and written to me over the years. And when this book began to condense in my mind, I mean, I write books really slowly. This is my fastest ever big book, and it only took me 4.5 years. The last one took 8 years. So this happened fast. The rush of the river, the rush of people, the rush of ideas. And then I was lucky to make these 3 really substantial fieldwork trips that were they were quite difficult in many ways. Ecuador is a hard country to travel in right now. It's suffering increasingly from a combination of kind of political and sort of narco violence, but it's also still home to some of the most astonishingly biodiverse places on Earth, which in turn are threatened by mining interests. Many of them, I should say, Canadian, of course. There are a lot of bad actors sort of circling life in Ecuador. And traveling to that cloud forest out of which all of these rivers run, because cloud forests are river makers, and seeing the threats, but also seeing the defense of life, of water, and an understanding that water is life very fundamentally to humans, more than humans, was both, despair making and hopeful.
So when you went to Ecuador, did you, like when you were writing about the rivers in Ecuador, did you just focus on Ecuador, or were you traveling, like were you doing, I'm thinking about how you wrote this book. Did you say, okay, so I'm going to focus on Ecuador, so I'm going to go there for a few months and just write that part of the book. Then I'm going to go over here and write this part of the book. Is that how you did it?
Yeah, because it's such fieldwork is such an intense process, and you have to sort of come to know a place, spend time with people, move in landscape. I mean, landscape is what I've always written about. I grew up as a mountaineer. The first book I wrote 22 years ago also had a question at its heart, which is, why do people climb mountains? Uh, but it was a question that made no sense to me. I was like, well, obviously you climb mountains. That's what I've grown up doing. They're astonishing and beautiful things. But so I've always written about landscape, and landscape always surprises me. That's what I found. You can get so far in a library, but then when you're actually in the land with people, with places, with rivers, with mountains, with creatures, surprise just pours in, and you have to be there for periods of time for that to happen.
So how long would you, like, give me an example. How long were you in Ecuador for? About?
A month, yeah, and then in Quebec in Nitassinan, we were dropped by float plane about 120 miles up this river system, the Magpie River, the Muteshikashipu, and then there's nothing. There's no roads. There's only boreal forest and this astonishing surging river that was running at about, I think, 260 cubic meters a second. At that time, there'd been a lot of rain, so that was about 150% higher than it should have been in terms of flow rate. So everything was big. The scale of your extraordinary landscape, the force of your rivers, which was augmented by all the rain. So there are times when the intensity of encounter sort of, it just wears away a lot of one's normal suppositions or orthodoxies or presumptions. And so we're kind of returned to like, how do you begin to reimagine what a river is? Well, you have to be rivered. That's what I realized. And that does take time and an intensity of encounter.
So tell me about the Magpie River.
Well, it is part of that extraordinary system of watersheds and lakes, chain lakes, and huge rivers that flows off the Canadian Shield. So we're talking kind of Quebec, Labrador, down to meet the Gulf of St. Lawrence on the north coast. And the reason I was drawn to the Magpie, the Muteshikau, is that in 2021, it became the first Canadian river to have its rights declared, the right to flow undammed to the sea. An amazing moment in Canadian legal and imaginative history. And it was a mirror resolution that was issued by the regional council, Mingani Regional Council, and the Innu Council at Equaniche, this little township near the mouth of the river. It's a beautiful document. And the Innu version of the document says, this river is alive. It's a living being. It has flowed with us, and we have flowed with it for 8,000 years. And we assert its rights. We recognize its rights to flow, to flourish, to exist, to persist. And, meeting this document, it's such a shock, right? Because it overturns a lot of presumptions about how we view nature, the living world, how we relate to it. And it's a beautiful piece of prose. Your listeners can go and find it pretty easily. And so I was drawn at once by the river. I love your north. I'm a very north-minded person, but also by the ideas that had gathered around that river.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And I did not know that. And well, I've never been to Quebec, so I don't know the Magpie River. That's geography I'm not very familiar with. So that's really amazing to hear. And I mean, I know that, I know in British Columbia, we have incredible, beautiful, we have access to so much water, right? Like whether it be the Pacific Ocean, whether it be lakes or rivers or streams, where they seem to be everywhere here.
Yeah, you do. You have this generosity of land, right? And land and water that is quite remarkable for someone from my country, which industrialized earliest, has desperately depleted. We're something like 184th most nature depleted country on Earth. I mean, we have so little left, and our land is so managed and confined and constrained.
Well, you're an island. I mean, there's only so much of it.
There is only so much of it, and it's been farmed and occupied for 5,000 years plus. So
can you bring them back, Robert? Can you bring a river back?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's a beautiful question, and it's a sort of resurrection question, right? If it's a revival question, and there are rivers. So there's a beautiful chalk stream river in North Norfolk, about an hour and a half from where I live. And when I step into that, I step into water that is clear as gin. You can tell what my favorite spirit is. I should say, yeah, it is not actually gin. It's not a gin flowing river. But the biology of it is just so rich and vibrant. Pike and kingfishers and otters and moorhens, and everything is right there. And when you step into that river, it's called the Nar. Once you're stepping back into the past of rivers in England, what they once were, and you're stepping forwards into a possible future. And rivers do recover really fast if you give them a chance. And they heal us when we heal them. That is absolutely clear to me.
And so the killing of a river, it does happen because of pollution. Is that the only thing that kills a river?
It's a great way of putting it. A dam can drown a river. There's only one thing that can drown a river, and that's a reservoir with a dam.
Man-made,
yeah.
So I'm just trying to think: have humans are the only killers of rivers?
River killers. Yeah, that's exactly right.
There's the next book title, River Killers.
River killers. Yeah, Riverside. Not homicide, but Riverside. Yeah, we have such power now as earth shapers. The Yangtze Gorge 3 Dams project has now impounded so much water that it has measurably slowed the rotation of the earth. India, as you will know, just cut off the Indus to Pakistan during the recent hostilities and standoffs. We can pick up whole watersheds and reroute the river to another watershed. So I think because we have gained such power through technology, we see rivers as objects to be moved around, to be manipulated, to be stopped, and that manipulation has brought us incredible gifts in terms of human flourishing, including clean drinking water and clean electricity for billions of people. But it has come at a cost as well. So there is a very old story about rivers, which is that they are living presences, and there is a very young story, which is that they are there absolutely at our command, our control. And so it's a question of, for me as a storyteller, as a writer, of rebalancing the stories we tell about rivers.
Okay, there's something you just said, something that made me think of a documentary I watched. I want to ask you about it, but before we do that, we like to thank our guests for being here by asking them to choose a Canadian registered charity. You chose Pathways to Education. They are fantastic, and we are going to make a donation in your name as a thank you for you being here as a guest. So thank you so much for choosing Pathways to Education.
Thank you. I am a teacher in my day job, so education is.
I was wondering if you had a day job, or you were just, maybe you're part of the royal family and you can take 4 years to write a book and just, travel around, do some field work here and there.
No. I'm a professor at Cambridge, so yeah, teaching is my first vocation.
You said something about the cost of, and it made me think about this documentary I watched I think it was called The True Cost, and it's about fast fashion. And again, something I never thought about, right? I love documentaries. So we watched this documentary, The True Cost, and it follows your clothes. So whether you're going to Bangladesh or whether it's India, Pakistan, Thailand, wherever it is, and it's like, who is making your clothes? What is the cost of you wearing this t-shirt you bought for $20? What is the cost of that t-shirt? And the cost is our environment, right? And the cost is, human wellness, and all that sort of stuff. And it is mind expanding, that documentary. But one visual that I cannot get out of my head is they're making these shoes, and they're leather shoes, and it's the soles, and it's right beside a river or a stream, if you will, not a big river, but like a stream. And it's, or a creek maybe is a better word, not a stream, a creek. I forgot about creeks. Um, just remembered about creeks right now. And the creek is the color of rust. So there is no clear water. And so they're making these, and they're on the ground, and there's mud everywhere, and they're making these shoe things, soles, and all the waste is going into the creek, which is then feeding into another body of water, which is then making its way into the village's drinking water, which is then making it, you know what I mean? Because a river flows and keeps flowing. And those shoes that we're wearing are poisoning tens of thousands, if not more, lives and animals and plants and everything else. And so, when you just said that, the cost of, when we were talking about what we do to rivers and that, I mean, how do we are the reason
We are.
that the waterways are not healthy.
Yeah.
It stops with us.
It stops with us, and that's exactly right. In economic terms, these are called externalities. These are the costs that do not show up on a debit sheet and almost always get hived off onto the environment, onto nature. Karl Marx talks about nature's free gift to capital, not approvingly, as it were. So we're back to that idea that you can that nature will take everything that we have to give it and will just vanish it. And so rivers are so, like, 0.015% of the world's water flows in our river systems. They are so rare, actually, and very fragile. But we can heal them. And maybe just a quick story about that. So the Klamath River, you may have heard of this. The Klamath flows out of Oregon through California and then to the Pacific coast. Big, long river system that once had the third biggest salmon run on the West Coast, Pacific salmon. And it was dammed. It was dammed from the 1920s onwards. 4 massive dams, like way up near the California-Oregon border. And that stopped the salmon run. It also changed the nature of the watershed completely. And about 25 years ago, the Yurok tribe, as a salmon people, as it were, whose identity had been taken away from them when the dams went up, as well as land that got drowned, they began, along with an alliance of others, a campaign for the de-damming of the Klamath. And no one thought this had a chance. 4 massive dams. And it happened, and last year, the last of those dams was fully dismantled, and within 2 days of the final dam coming down, the first Pacific salmon was caught on sonar, nosing its way up past where the Iron Gate Dam had stood. 2 weeks later, 290 salmon were passing. The watershed is recovering. I've just seen these beautiful photos of lupine and California poppy, gold, orange, yellow, blossoming where the reservoirs once lay over land. So watching life just pour back to that watershed as the river is allowed to be free, allowed to live again. And a filmmaker, Shane Anderson, who's been recording the Klamath story for years now, he was there in May, and he just posted just saying, the air smelled sweet and the river felt alive. And I was just like, yes. So it can happen. Yes, we harm them, but we can help them heal themselves. And it is a self-healing on the river's part. We're not giving the gift of life to it, but we heal with it. And watching people return to that watershed and become renourished by that living river is, I just keep that in my mind as a story.
It's so interesting. Your book is really, I don't know. I really like it because it just makes you think about something that is so part of your just life, right? That you know what a river is. You think about rivers. I can't believe I forgot about creeks. I mean, how rude. Um,
We don't have creeks.
you don't have any creeks?
Not in British English. It's not a word. We have gills and rills and rivulets and streams and becks and brooks, but we do not have creeks.
Oh, a brook. Yeah, we never say brook
You
here.
never say brook. Yeah, you have brook trout though. Yeah, it's just like sort of around. Yeah. So
Gosh, that's so funny.
there's a beautiful language of all of this.
And so that's what this book has really done. It's opened that all up. I really appreciate this conversation. It's just been, I mean, I never thought I could talk about rivers for so long. I really didn't. And here we are. So kudos to you. And your writing is wonderful, and it's a great book. And I think it's a good book to, have a family conversation about too,
How lovely to hear that. Thank you.
It really is. So everybody can find you on Instagram, Rob G. Macfarlane, and you are also on X. I find I spend less and less time on X.
No, I won't be on that for long.
Yeah, Rob G. Macfarlane. And the book is called Is a River Alive? Absolutely beautiful. It's brilliant. Robert, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tamara. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.